Hello everyone, welcome to PasigoDesign Watercolor Studio. Today I will be doing the painting of these Magnolia Buds. Really a nice composition, but it was really from a much larger image that I cropped in order to get this effect of the diagonals and the top interest with the bud standing out as the center of attention. So to do this painting, I decided to use Quinacridone Rose, Transparent Yellow, and Prussian Blue, all Winsor Newton colors. And before I got started, I transferred, of course, the image to the paper. This is an Arches. It's a cold press, so the texture is not really strongly textured. It's that the medium of the textures that you can get in paper. And it's going to be painted on dry. But that being said, I'm also going to be applying a lot of water with my paintbrush as I start painting, simply because I want the water to flow. I'll be starting with the background blues, bringing everything down from a slight angle to an area below. And where I see some strong yellows, yellows and greens, I will be adding the yellows and the blues together to have them mixed together. But I won't really be touching the actual red color at this point. I'm also going to use my larger brush, square brush, to do this background. And it just makes it a little bit easier to cover the space because it covers it faster. If you have a small brush, it takes you forever. So not a good idea to start with something like this. It's really not going to work too well for you. So I could even use something bigger than that, but we'll start with this. The other thing that I wanted to show you is that instead of using your masking fluid, you can also add, for example, a little sticker like this, which will come off very easily once I don't want it anymore. But it's basically to tell me that this area is going to be light. And here's the image again where I want to retain that nice white glow in the center here and a lot of lightness there. Also, this leaf has a lot of yellow, and so I'm just going to try to paint the yellow in without actually masking it, and making sure that we retain, again, some of that pure color in order to have a nice mix of colors and values. So let's get started. All right, I'll just start at the top, put a little bit of water to get me going, check my colors, and I think that's looking good. All right, so here we go. And at this point, this is really just a, what I'm doing here is a wash. It's going to be an even wash in a sense, but I can variegate it. I shouldn't say variegate. I can grade it a little bit by adding some white. And all that's doing is that I have areas of lighter color and then areas of darker color. And my Prussian blue is a really good color for this because it's not too bright. You certainly could use a phthalo blue for this image, and it would also look quite beautiful. But for this one, I thought I'd stick to some very traditional, strong horse colors, and I'm certainly a fan of Prussian. So I've gotten about halfway down, and before I keep going too far, I'm only going to put some yellows on the leaves that I've already painted in here. Now, this is not a leaf shape that I had drawn, but I can actually put some color here, and then later on, if I want to make a leaf shape here, that'll be perfect. So let's add some whiteness. I shouldn't say whiteness because now I have a little bit of yellow in my brush, but I'm looking for some very diluted colors just to make sure that we are going to just pick that up and paint around. I'm glad I had my sticker. Here we go. And it doesn't matter if you get some blue, a little bit of blue in there, because could be a bit of a shadow in there at the end. You really don't have to worry right now too much about the blending of colors because it's your first layer. And all kinds of stuff happens in the first layer. Mostly what I'm interested in is getting the colors mingling together. As long as it's wet, I can change the order here of my strokes because everything is still moving. And if you find that throughout the painting, these two colors are reacting to each other. And so if you find that you're getting reactions that you don't like, you can also add some water at this stage and allow the pigments to keep moving more freely. I'm going to add more pigment up here. Okay, and everything is still very wet. I do want this to be more of the green. So let's just keep adding a little bit more color in here. And because this is a forest type nature painting, I can put up with some areas being a little inconsistent in terms of the mingling of the colors. That's perfectly fine in nature. In fact, it's a nicer effect if you have a lot of variety in the textures. So that's about it. And I'm just going to let that dry. Before I do that, I will pick up a little bit more here. My dot helped to remind me that I did not want to put too much color there. I also seem to have a little bit of extra pigment. There we go. Perfect. And we'll come back in a few minutes. Okay, so I'm back, and I like the effect that the water and the paint blending together on paper created. So I'm going to continue now with painting the leaves, and we're going to leave the masking fluid on here a little bit longer till I'm ready to make the painting of the buds, and we'll just keep going. So, and I did let it dry on its own for about 10 minutes, but I also blow dried it a little bit because I wanted to make sure it was really good and dry. I don't really care to have it do crazy things on me when when it's not properly dried. So here we go. I'm looking at my picture here, and I'm just going to start at the top, I guess, over here, and start painting some blue on some of these shapes. I'm going to use blue here because it's up far into the top of the painting, and I won't really need an awful lot of light colors just yet. Like, I'll keep the lighter colors maybe closer to the middle of the painting. We'll see. We'll play with that. And probably not too much detail in terms of the veins and all that. And we can tell that from just looking at the image. It's pretty dark in here. I may actually add another layer afterwards on this to see how it all balances out with the painting. So here I have something that is probably a little bit lighter on the edge, and then it goes into some darker colors. So let's get more of that blue in here. Very watery still. I'm adding pigment, changing the color of the shapes to a certain degree. And again, it's not the last layer, it's just the layer that helps me to create the shapes. And I'm going to do that right across the whole painting. I'm changing, I look at what's beside it, and I add color that contrasts with what is beside it. Don't really care so much about what the picture is telling me at this point. I'm thinking about what's going to look good in the painting. So I left a, a big circle here. It'd be fun to maybe have a little drop in here, drop of water, maybe something like that. Okay, so some of these branches I'm going to attack later. Certainly the areas that are very dark, we're going to do that after we do the leaves. And I'm looking in this corner, and a lot of this is pretty dark, but we can put some yellows, or we can actually leave some of the yellows showing from underneath, because there is a lot of yellow on here already. So there we go. And on this one, I'll just put a bit of a line like that. This is, in the image, is sort of an orangey color. It'll be more like a branch. It could have been more of that color, but I'm just going to paint it dark later, so we don't have to do that just yet. And if you want to soften these edges, I just put a little bit of water, slight bit of water on my brush, and make sure that it's fairly dry when I rub it in. We'll come back to that. Let's do this big one. I like the yellow that is in here, so I'm going to grab more of that yellow. I'm going to make that a bit brighter. And once again, once I have my highlight, I can go ahead and do whatever works best over here. And at the bottom, there's a vein here that we can try to preserve. Okay. And then on the bottom one, some yellows, same colors, blues, and we can retain some of that beautiful edge here, the light on the edge. All right. And then here we can also change the color later by adding some red to the green. And what would that look like? Well, let's take a look actually. A little bit of red here. What that's doing is it's neutralizing that green so that the green is not as bright, and it's basically desaturated, right? We don't have that pure color anymore, and it's giving me more of a shadow color. or even just a color of the leaf, this particular leaf, as it's going to the tip. You can see we can build up the branches like that later. And for this one, lots of beautiful yellow here. And I'll put some green on the bottom. And let it mingle. I'm going to come back to this shape a little later. I'll make it much darker. And I think that's it for the leaves. Yeah. All right. There's a lot of water here. It's quite the puddle, so I'm going to pick up some of that color with my brush as it's dry. And that might leave a few spots here, but that's often very interesting too in foliage. That's what you get in nature. Okay, so while we wait for the greens to dry, we can start working on our branches, as long as they're not connecting to the leaf shapes. So I could work on this branch, this trunk actually, and then maybe down here, the large ones would be a good start. Being careful not to disturb what's going on in the leaves. This is actually also a leaf shape, so let's do this one. And just a little bit more yellow in here. All right. So the branches are going to be a combination of yellow, and so we can do two things. We can put like an orange, and let's try that just to see what happens. If I paint orange here, later on I can put something on top of here like my blue, and I'll get something pretty dark. Running out of blue. So let's try that. Let's go with the orange. There are so many ways that we can make this branch, that we can color this branch. All right. And now, from here, I'll bring this color down, but let's see, how far do we go here? We can come all the way down to this shape, but I'm going to be very careful because I have a lot of wetness happening over here, so I don't really want to make that mingle too much, so we'll stop there. It's coming in a bit here, which is fine. It's coming into the branch. Good. It wouldn't matter actually if it's going into your leaf. You can. All I'm trying to avoid is having the whole thing flooded with color that is different from the rest of the painting. But some mingling here happening is perfectly fine because it is what it is. It's nature. And I think this is a branch here. It is now. And let's do this one here. Now, staying away from the edges that are wet, because we can always adjust, change later too. Like, it's not the last layer. This is still a working layer, defining colors and direction and so on. There's this to me is I'm going to keep that orange all the way up into here. All right, and then this one, just to be consistent, will be orange as well. Looks like a branch in here. I went a little further than what I had on the image, so I can create whatever I want here. And to me, this is also a leaf shape, so let's just add that there. And maybe another leaf shape here with a bit more green in it. Always changing my color so that whatever is next to is a little bit different. Because if it's all exactly the same color, then you can't really see what is in front of and what is in behind. Until you add, of course, the shadows and change the values. So, but this, I think, will work. Okay, one more here. Now, once again, we're at a stage where we want to let this dry. I see one more spot here. Make that a little lighter. And some things here, I don't know what it is. It doesn't matter. And these are going to be some red in here. Still going to be branches. You can change that bright red later. Doesn't have to be now. And it's just the first layer of color on these shapes, and they'll change. All right, so we're ready to let that dry again, and then when I come back, we'll work on the buds. And that little circle here is quite interesting, isn't it? All right. Okay, I'm back. I basically just dried it the best I could with my hair blower, and I feel like it's pretty much dry. There might be, seems like it's a little uneven, so it's possible that there's some slight moisture still in the paper, but I'm going to be working on the branches. And where we left them was at a stage where I would like to add color to make them a little bit stronger. Want them to come out much darker, right? So the orange is a good color to actually work with. It's going to be it's going to change the color quite a bit if I add blue. Now I'm going to start with this color, and I'll make another color beside here. And the color that I want to add now, because I do see a little bit of green in here, but I also see some really good darks. So I'm going to be using the, like, both colors, the blue and the purple. Right over top of everything. Blue and some of that purple, which makes it deeper. So the effect that I'm getting here is that of a very dark branch, and I want this to be interesting. Let's just add different colors in here. And let's continue up here. All my three colors are mingling together now, and they're basically building the darks that this painting really desperately needs, right? We'll continue here. Now I'm painting the whole thing. There's really not an awful lot of light on these. Maybe a little bit here. So I'll lift some of that just to have an area of contrast. And then we'll start working down here with our blue again. These are all very liquid paints. Now, if I take a look at what's on my brush when I'm doing this, it's not super strong. Okay. And some of that purple. I'm following the design here of these shapes. We can leave some little highlights on some of the branches. That's going to be dark there too. Could have pulled that out, I guess. And maybe there's something in here going up into the top here. Let's just make this darker so it stands out more. All right. If you feel like you want to clean up some edges at this time, it's still a good time because it's wet. One more up here. And we're going to let that dry. Other than, oops, maybe we can do this one. I don't want it to be quite as dark as the others. And certainly the red has to change somewhat. So let's add some purple to this. And a little bit of blue. And some green. There is some red in here, so that's why I'm trying to keep some of that red in certain areas, but I don't know if I want too much of that. Okay. I can also do this one. And we'll continue down here. For this area, I want to make it a different color, just to show that it's at the front of. We'll put the line on the edge. And then down here, I can make that pretty dark. Still can change that color later. Okay. Now the leaf shapes are still somewhat damp in certain areas. I'm just going to leave that. The next part is to take the masking fluid off. Oh, I love how the masking fluid leaves these beautiful shapes. I might even want to keep some of that. Let's try it. So this is very bright. I'm just going to leave the white tip for now, see what that looks like. Okay, this is yellow with a touch of blue on the edge. And we'll leave that. This one, I want to use some of this masking stuff. I'm not sure. I want it to be, I don't even know what that's going to do exactly. Just kind of like that little design there. So this is more of an orangey color. So I'm taking the yellow, adding some red to it, and painting the inside of this bud. The rest of it is going to be green on that side. A little bit of orange in here. I have no idea what this is going to do. It's really just an experiment that we're going to be playing with. I think it's kind of fun, right? There we go. So this on this side of the painting, it's kind of a beige color. So if I start with some orange and add a little bit of that violet, I can get something kind of like a dirty color and add that here on both sides. Just some of this can stay pretty solid. And all I'm really looking for here is the white in the center. And that's still wet, so we have to stop here. Okay, I'm back. I just dried it with my hair blower, and now I'll remove the rest of the masking. All right, so we see some white here. We don't need the white there so much, but I really wanted to have a crisp edge here, and I just didn't want to lose the possibility of having some whites in there if I wanted them. Like in here, we'll see. I probably don't want to leave the white here, but let's see how that plays out. So now, I'm also looking at the branches actually, and I kind of like the effect that I'm getting from this mixture. I love the texture that was created here. And I also noticed that I kind of missed out doing on that one. So I'll bring in some red in here right away, all the way down to this shape. And probably add a bit, not probably, I am adding some blue just to make it darker. I like that little tip, and I'm going to put some yellow on there just for fun. It looks more like a piece of a leaf maybe coming out or something. Anyway, we're creating, right? We're doing whatever we feel like makes sense to us, and we're not copying the image per se. We're making our own creation. So now I'm using my blue to add some darker color here. But I'm finding that this is not the blue, or it's not the green that I want anymore. These were all my bright greens. Now I want my green to be more desaturated, meaning it's going to be a little bit darker And in order to do that, I'm mixing the green, but I'm also adding some red. That's where the red comes in handy. And what it is that it's now giving me a color that is darker, a darker green than what we used on those shapes. So let's do that. I want to show the difference between this leaf shape now. Just adding different colors in it, and then seeing the difference between these shapes. Let's just add a bit of darkness here. And if I don't like that, I'm going to change my strategy for the next one. So let's try green, which is basically it's a blue, but it's on the green, so it's giving me a very bright green. And then if I take this color now on this side, so one is darker, this one has a bit more yellow in it, so it's giving me two colors. And it gives the contrast maybe that I'm looking for. I'm putting some at the bottom as well. Some of that red at the bottom. All of this is, you're experimenting and you are trying to do changes to the pigment that you are applying. And I'm just adding on top, dabbing, not rubbing in, but changing the color by dabbing more colors. And you see now how dark this has become. Maybe that's not what you wanted, but it's an effect that you can try and find out if it's what you like. All right, so how else could I do that? I could take yellow and blue, and I could also take my brush, another brush, and just add some water on this shape and let the colors blend in that way also. And that way it's a little easier to handle, less control over where it's going, but giving you a clear change in colors. Like you can see now that I have the green is staying at the bottom, the yellow is mingling where the water is that I laid down first, and it's a really nice effect. All right, a little bit of color here. Now, I'm looking at the rest of the painting and I'm finding these are very dull. So let's go back to the purple and add color here. Not everywhere. Okay, so now that makes that pop a little bit better. This leaf shape is very light, so we can keep the light in it, but just add a little bit more contrast. We're getting close to our final layer here, and so we're looking at how everything interacts with the thing that's beside it. So in here, what I'd like to do is highlight the fact that we have different little shapes here. This one here is also a different shape. So putting a bit of shadow in the area where there's an overlap helps us to define that shape. And of course your blue is your strongest color, so you can put it underneath for maximum contrast. I shouldn't say that, it's purple really, so if you want it to be really dark, there we go. And now that it's dry, I can go ahead and put more of this defining color in other areas to show the contrast. Now take a look at the mix I just made here. You may not be able to see that very well, but it's actually very close to a black. Okay, various like a blue-black. So this one just had more blue in it, more of the three primary colors. And this is a really good color for creating strong contrast. It's still glazing. I'm still using a minimal amount of pigment on there, but creating now an effect that is shadow. Now this is the color that you don't want to put everywhere. You just want to use it in the spots where you want to show that difference in the... Now I'm going to use my brush to make little details like this just to create texture and variety. We don't have to do that because we don't see anything on here. It's super dark, but I always like to do a little bit of that texture. Now let's make that purple. I'm down to my very strong darks right now, so I don't mind if I mess up my colors now. I'm at the stage where I want my colors to get messed up a bit. Okay. And at the bottom can be a bit more purplish. All right. I'm looking for little areas of shadow underneath the leaf here. And let me see here. I find now that I've got my darks in, that there are other areas of lightness that I can call out. So just some colors now to show form of the leaves. And a little bit of texture. Doesn't take much actually to show that change. Very little paint on my brush. And maybe on this one. Let's just do that. Okay, now we're back to the buds. We haven't really completed that yet. And we also want to put a little bit of texture in here, perhaps. I can do that later. That looks odd. So that looks odd. Yeah, that was sort of a leaf shape that was continuing into this part apart here, so we'll just try to soften that up a little bit afterwards. Or maybe actually add more color here. Not bad. The bud, the orange color, needs a bit of texture. And I'm going to use that purple for that. Took all the water off my brush and I'm just rubbing it in a little bit. And on this side, I have a dark green. So my dark green, blue and yellow and purple, darker green. And some yellow here. I don't want to cover the whole thing, so I can see some of that color here. The orange, a little bit over here. But if I do too much of it, then I've lost that really strong glow, so we're going to leave it. And all we're going to do is add more green at the bottom to make the contrast between the two shapes. And at the top there is a little tip. Make it blue. All right. And I think that at this point, we could stop here, but I would wait till it dries one more time, and I would check it again to see where I can add more darks. In here, definitely, maybe just some pure blue here to deepen these shapes into the background. There was that little circle there that I didn't use, but we could have made a little drop, water drop there. And at the top here also, just whatever is in your palette at this point, adding that color to just to give it a little bit more distance. Maybe some yellows in here. Something fell. There you go. I don't want anything too strong, and I don't want it to be bright. If anything, I want the darkness to kind of take over up here. So to get something dark at this stage of this green, I should be putting in a little bit more blue. And this one as well. All right. I want more yellow here, stronger yellow, and a little bit more here. And also I wanted some texture in this area. So you can take a brush, a small brush, like a liner. Here's a liner. I don't never use this. Maybe let's try it. So my liner is good because it has a nice point to it, and all I'm looking is for a bit of contrast here. We see some little shapes here, and it doesn't have to be a lot, but it's just to give it texture. And there's also texture in here, but it's wet, so we'd have to wait a bit longer. I'm going to do it anyways because this is the end of the video, so let's just, it's wet, so I'm adding a little bit of wet on wet actually right now. All right. And I would probably want this to be darker. All right, well, I'm going to stop here because as you can see, we can keep making corrections in a sense, adding a little bit more every time until we're happy with it, until we've decided that, yeah, that works. This is it. I'm done with it. Until you're satisfied with the results, you may find yourself fiddling around. But at some point you have to say, okay, enough is enough, and that is the end of the painting. So I'm going to stop here. I'll say enough is enough, and this is the end of the painting. So give it a try, and happy painting. See you at the next class. I'll answer your questions, any questions you may have about this painting. All right. Thank you for watching.